Hello, everybody. This is your old pal Jerry V here from the Lucero Library here on the east side of fabulous Pueblo, Colorado. And this is another installment of the Tales from the Stacks from your friends here at the Lucero Library. Miss Christie has started out the last installment of the Tales from the Stacks, and we are reading Stuart Little. I'd like to thank HarperCollins for allowing us to read you this installment of the Tales from the Stacks for this week. So without further ado, I will move on to chapter 3. Chapter 3, Washing Up. Stuart was an early riser. He was almost always the first person up in the morning. He liked the feeling of being the first one up stirring. He enjoyed the quiet rooms and the books standing still on the shelves, the pale light coming in through the windows, and the fresh smell of the day. In the wintertime, it was it would be quite dark when he would climb out of his bed made out of the cigarette box, and he would sometimes shiver with the cold as he stood in the night in his nightgown doing his exercises. Stuart touched his toes 10 times every morning to keep himself in good condition. He had seen his brother George do it, and George had explained to him it keeps his stomach muscles firm, and it would be a fine abdominal thing to do. After exercising, Stuart would slip on his handsome wool wrapper, tie a cord tightly around his waist, and start for the bathroom, creeping silently through the long, dark hall, past his mother and father's room, past the closet where the carpet sweeper was kept, past George's room, and along by the head of the stairs, till he got to the bathroom. Of course, the bathroom would be dark too, but Stuart's father had thoughtfully tied a long string to the pull chain of the light. The string reached clear to the floor. By grasping it as high up as he could and throwing his whole weight into it, Stuart was able to turn on the light. Swinging on the string this way and that way, which looked like a long bathrobe trailing around his ankles. He looked like an old friar pulling the bell rope on the abbey in the abbey. To get to the wash basin, Stuart had to climb a tiny rope ladder which his father had fixed for him. George had promised to build Stuart a small special which wash basin only 1 inch high and with a little rubber tube so which water would flow through. But George was always saying things that he was going to build. He was going to build something and then forgot. Stuart went ahead and climbed the rope ladder to finish the he, Stuart went ahead and climbed the rope ladder to the family wash basin every morning to wash his face and hands and brush his teeth. Miss Little had provided him with a doll's sized toothbrush, a doll's sized cake of soap, a doll's sized washcloth, and a doll's sized comb, which he used for combing his whiskers. He carried he carried these things with him to in his bathrobe pocket, and when he reached to the top of the ladder, he took them out and laid them neatly in a row, and set out about his task of turning on the water, for which a small fellow turning on the water was quite a problem. He had discussed it with his father one day after making several unsuccessful attempts. I can't get to the I can't get up into the faucet all right, he explained. I can get up to into the faucet all right, he explained, but I can't turn it on because I have nothing to brace my feet against. Yes, I know, his father replied. That's the whole trouble. George, who always listened to conversations whenever he could, said that in his opinion they ought to construct a brace for Stuart. and that he would be able to get some boards, a saw, a hammer, a screwdriver, and a bradawl, and some nails, and started making a terrific fuss in the bathroom, building what he said would be a brace for Stuart. But soon he became interested in something else and disappeared, leaving the tools laying all over the bathroom floor. Stuart, after examining this mess, turned to his father again. Maybe I could pound the faucet with something and turn it on that way, he said. So, Stuart's father provided him with a very small, light wooden hammer, and Stuart found that by swinging it around 3 times around his head and letting it come down with a crash against the handle of the faucet, he could start a thin stream of water, enough to wash his teeth, anyway, and moisten his washcloth. So for every morning, after climbing to the basin, he would seize his hammer and pound the faucet, and other members of the family household, dozing in their beds, would hear the bright, sharp sounds of a quick, sharp plink, plink, plink of Stuart's hammer, making like a faraway blacksmith, telling them that the day had come and that Stuart was trying to brush his teeth. Chapter 4. Exercise. One fine morning in the month of May, when Stuart was only 3 years old, he arose early, at he arose early as was his custom, washed himself, dressed himself, and took his hat and cane and went downstairs to the living room to see what everybody was doing. Nobody was around but Snowball, the white cat that belonged to Mrs. Little. Snowball was another early riser, and this morning he was lying on the rug in the middle of the room, thinking about the days when he was a kitten. Good morning, Stuart. Hello, replied Snow. Good morning, said Stuart. Hello, replied Snowball sharply. You're up early, aren't you? Stuart looked at his watch. Yes, he said. It's only 5 minutes past 6, but I feel good, and I thought that I'd come down and get a little exercise. I think you should get a little exercise, all the exercise you want, up there in the bathroom, banging around, walking, waking all the rest of us up, and trying to get the water started so you can brush your teeth. Your teeth aren't even big enough to brush anyway. You want to see a good set? Look at mine. Snowball opened his mouth and showed him 2 rows of gleaming white, sharp teeth. Very nice, said Stuart. But mine are all right, too, even though they're small. As for exercise, I take all I can get. I bet my stomach muscles are firmer than yours. I bet not, said the cat. I bet they are, said Stuart. They're like iron bands. I bet they're not, said the cat. Stuart glared around the room to see what he could do to prove to Snowball what good stomach muscles he had. He spied a drawstring on the window shade on the east window, with its shade cord and a ring, like a trapeze, and it gave him an idea. Climbing the windowsill, he took off his hat and laid down his cane. You can't do this, he said to the cat, and he ran and jumped into the ring the way acrobats do in the circus. Meaning to pull himself up, a surprising thing happened. Stuart had taken such a hard jump, and that it had started the shade, and with a loud snap, the shade flew clear up to the top of the window, dragging Stuart along with it and rolling him up inside so he couldn't budge. Holy mackerel, said Snowball, who almost was as surprised as Stuart. I guess that will teach you to show off your little muscles. Help! Let me out! Cried Stuart, who was frightened and bruised inside the rolled up shade, and who could hardly breathe, but his voice was so weak that nobody heard him. Snowball just chuckled. He wasn't fond of Stuart and didn't bother him, and it didn't bother him that Stuart was wrapped up in the window shade, crying and hurting and unable to get out. Instead of running up and telling Mr. and Mrs. Little about the accident, Snowball did something very curious. He glanced around to see if anybody was looking, and then he leapt softly to the windowsill, picked up Stuart's hat and cane in his mouth, and carried them to the pantry and laid them down to the entrance to the mouse hole. When Miss Little came down later and found them there, she gave a thrilling scream which brought everybody running. What happened? She said. What has? Asked her husband. Stuart's down the mouse hole. And that, my friends, is our installment for today of Stuart Little. I'd like to thank HarperCollins and everybody else who's out there watching. I appreciate you. Thank you, Miss Jessica, for being in the background. I appreciate you. And then for everybody else, don't forget to tune into some cool and other exciting things that happen from your friends here at the Lucero Library, as well as all the cool things that are happening at PCCLD. So from Jerry V and all of us here at Lucero, peace.